Yes, we still have a time. We'll wait for 1 more minute. Yes, we can start. It's 11. Let's start. Who will follow me for the chanting? I think, yeah, okay, Rimjim. Just share the screen. You can see the screen?
Yes, yes.
Great. So, Rimjim will follow me, as always, with Sahana Vavatu. Sahana Vavatu.
Sahana Vavatu.
Sahanau Bhunaktu.
Sahano Bhunaktu.
Sahaviryam Karavavahai.
Sahaviryam Karavavahai.
Tejasvinavadhitamastu.
Tejasvinavadhitamastu.
Ma vidvishavahai.
Ma vidvishavahai.
Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.
Take a minute in our own minds. Invoke the spirit of the invocation as we have studied, because as we said, once you begin to know these, they become kind of mechanical and one just slips into just repeating it for its own sake. By itself, they are just words. It is only when we invoke the meaning or invoke the words, be identified with the words, that there is some power, you may say, that you generate in the words. The identification begins to work. So let us see the spirit of it in our own self, just for a few seconds. Whatever we have understood, let us invoke it. On to the next one. Rimjim can follow. Vasudevendra Yogindram.
Vasudevendra Yogendram.
Natva Jnanapradam Gurum.
Tattva Bodha Gurum.
मुमुक्षूणां हितार्थाय
मुमुक्षुराहितार्थाय
मुमुक्षूणां हितार्थाय
मुमुक्षुरां हितार्थाय
तत्त्वबोधोऽभिधीयते
तत्त्वबोधो ते
तत्त्वबोधोऽभिधीयते
तत्त्वबोधोऽभिधीयते
वसुदेवेन्द्रयो नत्वा ज्ञानप्रदं गुरुं
वासुदेवेन्द्रयो इन्द्रं नत्वा ज्ञानप्रदं गुरुम्
मुमुक्षूणां हितार्थाय तत्त्वबोधोऽभिधीयते
मुमुक्षुराहितार्थाय तत्त्वबोधोऽभिधीयते.
See this anuswar on na, so
जी.
it goes mumukshunam. That ma is sounded.
भाई मैं कोशिश कर रही हूँ वो जी.
Mumukshunam,
मुमुक्षुणां
mumukshunam.
मुमुक्षुणां
Just say mumukshu.
मुमुक्षु
Ram.
राम.
See this in the word meaning here below Guru.
Yes.
Mumukshunam.
मुमुक्षुणां
Mumukshunam hitarthaya.
मुमुक्षुणां हितार्थाय
तत्त्वबोधोऽभिधीयते
तत्त्वबोधोऽभिधीयते.
Good. So, Shankaracharya here is invoking his Guru and also Jagat Guru, whichever way we see it, offering the Namaskar. This Guru is a Guru who is a bestower of knowledge, and he says, for the sake of those who desire liberation, I am beginning to elaborate, expound, I am beginning to explain in such a way the Tattvam, the very essence, that it becomes a grasping reality to one who is a mumukshu, the desirer. And then we move on to the next one. Nityam Shuddhan Nirabhasam
नित्यं शुद्धं निराभासं
Nirakaram Niranjanam
निराकारं निरञ्जनं
Nityabodham Chidanandam
नित्यबोधं चिदानन्दं
Gurum Brahma Namamyaham
गुरुं ब्रह्म नमाम्यहम्
Gurum Brahma Namamyaham
गुरुं ब्रह्म नमाम्यहम्
Nityam Shuddhan Nirabhasam Nirakaram Niranjanam
नित्यं शुद्धं निराभासं निराकारं निरञ्जनम्
Nityabodham Chidanandam Gurum Brahma Namamyaham
नित्यबोधं चिदानन्दं गुरु ब्रह्म नमाम्यहम्
Gurum Brahma Namamyaham
गुरुं ब्रह्म नमाम्यहम्.
This, we were seeing the word Nityam in the last class, and explain Nityam, we said Nityam word is a lakshana, an indicator, a pointer, a direct pointer to the nature of reality, to the nature of truth. This reality, what we call as absolute truth in English, in Sanskrit, in Vaidika vision, it's called Brahman. Same thing, absolute truth in English is called Brahman in Vaidika language, in Sanskrit. Brahman is being absolute by nature, is certainly above all relative factors. So to point out, to show to someone, to educate someone the nature of absolute truth becomes impossible in a way. Something that can be explained has always been that which your senses grasp. If an object has some qualities, those qualities get described, and that description helps the listener understand the nature of the object. But if the object to be described is actually the very subject, is the very individual, is the very nature of the individual, if excuse me, if the very nature of the individual is told to be the absolute truth and not this relative individual that each one thinks himself to be, how does one convey that subjective experience of a person which Veda says is in essence the absolute nature? That to explain, which has no properties, no qualities, to explain that, the method they use as pointers. When you go on seeing in the direction in which it keeps elaborating, and then it will tell you at some point of time to just drop everything that you have and keep focusing on the vision that you have acquired because of knowledge. When you go on focusing on that, that is recognized through whatever you have, lakshanas you have heard, understood. So the direct method of it is when you directly say, what is that? Absolute truth. Direct is swarupa lakshan. Uska swarup kya hai? Many places there seems to be a division of word between swarup and swabhav. Last time also someone asked a question. Swabhav badalta hai. Swabhav refers to the individual. हम सबके स्वभाव अलग हैं और सबका स्वभाव बदल सकता है, बट हम सब एक कॉन्शियस बीइंग हैं. ये हमारा स्वरूप है और ये बदल नहीं सकता है. That my nature can change. As a child I was something, as a youth I am something, as an old person my nature may still change, subject to that. Itself is difficult for most of us, but it is still subject to change. It is possible to change. Swarup is not possible to change. That is why it is called Swarup. Swarup means जो उसका inherent nature है, without which it ceases to be what it is. A rose without its fragrance ceases to be a rose. It can be called another object, but it will not be called a rose. Sun without the heat and light ceases to be sun. It can be called another object, but it will cease to be. Sun is marked by its heat and light. ये इसका स्वरूप लक्षण है. नित्यम is the स्वरूप लक्षण. The other one was the indirect method called the Tatastha Lakshan. Tatastha Lakshan is when it is shown with the help of everything that your senses grasp, and then with the help of it, it points to that which is otherwise not seen by you as your nature, but with the help of all the pointers, you start identifying it. You start observing it. That help that it gives from the known realm to the unknown realm, that is called Tatastha Lakshan. Like, for example, we said Chandra Shakha Nyaya. This is one of the very famous tarkas, logic, that it gives you to point out how to identify a moon in a clouded night, especially the new moon. And he says you see it by following the direction of a dead tree and the twigs, and then just beyond it. I'm just revising it in case whoever's missed it. And then it also gives another example, Mundaka example we saw, Mundaka Upanishad, that just as if you're seeing sparks and someone asks, yonder, especially when there are forest fires, and if anybody has observed a forest fire, and you are obviously very far away from there, and from far off you see first some smoke, and you see some sparks in the sky. It's lit. Normally at night when you see it, early mornings when you see it, the sky has a different color at that time because the fire has seemed to be spread, a spread fire I'm talking about, and you just see the sparks. And what are those sparks? You immediately know that the sparks have the same nature as in fact, because there is the fire, there are the sparks. Sparks cannot exist without the fire. So what is the nature of that which has come from it? Has to be the same over here in this context of the spark and the fire. That to point out that they both have the same nature is indirect method of conveying the nature of the spark and the nature of fire, and saying that they both have the same nature. In the same way, this individual that you see yourself as born and dying, whose nature is actually Atman, Brahman, is the same nature as that of the totality when you see life everywhere else. A way of saying indirectly that is Tatastha Lakshan. Tatastha means with the help of some changing factor, you see that which is changeless. And we came to Satyam and we came to Mithya, and this whole Prakriya Karya Karana Sambandha was one of the ways in which they show this Tatastha Lakshana to indicate the Swarupa. There is now another way which we are going to start today, we are seeing today. There is another way in which you understand the word Nityam. Repeating again, Nityam we said is eternal. Eternal is something that you don't have a cognition of with the help of your intellect. And you still are told that your nature is eternal. That Swarup is eternal. That Swarup, how do you point out? Someone can very easily say, there is a quotation floating, very famous nowadays. This is by Bruce Lee, and his daughter is running the podcast, and it's Bruce Lee's wisdom. She runs the podcast on Bruce Lee's wisdom. And one of the quotations is, Bruce Lee said, to change with change is the changeless state. Bruce Lee says, means this is his wisdom, and many people will come up with this, that what we find in the world actually is a state of change, no doubt, but that change seems to be changelessly there. It never comes to a point where change has ceased to be. Change seems to be the nature of life, and that's a changeless fact. It's a changeless state. Change is the changeless truth. This seeing that there is a continuity of change in a changeless manner. Changelessly, there is a continuous flow. change. That state of continuity seen through change is called pravaha. One after another. A lot of people often say in life, they are contemplative at that time. They are not necessarily complaining, but they are contemplating. हमारी जिंदगी में एक चीज सॉल्व नहीं होती है, दूसरी आ जाती है ना. One situation resolves, another comes up. So we just seem to be now settling down and something unsettles again. And you realize that this constant expression of life, and there seems to be no cessation of it. There seems to be no relief from it. Day after day, change is there. You adapt to change, you flow with the change. Bruce Lee's here, wisdom says, flow with the change. The more you resist, the more difficult it becomes for you. Means accept the changelessness of change. This changelessness of change in Vedanta is taken as Purva Paksha. I told you before once, Purva Paksha means presenting a Swabhavik Sanshay. Swabhavik means when as an individual I'm told Shastra Vidya, my own mind, my own tarka, which is still actively not understood what is being told to me, has those doubts get presented as Swabhavik Prashna. Swabhavik hai ye पूछना. Swabhavik kya hai? Because that is also your experience. You're not imagining that there is a change in life and that seems to be ceaseless. In fact, most of us, by the time you reach middle age, are exhausted only for this fact that you go on adapting to changes and it just doesn't seem to end. In fact, how does one become a mumukshu? He becomes a mumukshu only when he begins to realize that this change is never going to end. However comfortable it becomes, however easy the life gets, however high a position I may achieve, however everything I may become, but it is still not a measure of my security. It is still going to make me vulnerable. It is still keeping me insecure. It is still the permanence that I seem to be wanting doesn't seem to come through everything that I have achieved in life. Anything that I may have achieved. It seems to be always beyond. It seems to be round the corner. It seems to be just a little more effort and maybe I will reach the stage where I will have to put no more effort. This kind of a changeless expression of change that one experiences is called pravaha. Pravaha comes from the word how you see river flowing continuously. It seems to be never ending. When the river is flowing, it's constant change there. You never have this same standpoint of a river at the same place. Continuous unbroken flow is called pravaha. So nityatvam, we have explained, is the swarupam. But if you go one layer deep, further layer, see this is from the science point, material point, we came to one layer which said nityam is the swarupa lakshan. Now to explain the swarupa lakshan, we are going one layer more deep, that Vedanta says there are two kinds of nityatvam. You will learn to differentiate when you observe. One nityatvam seems to be that which is continuous change. Pravaha nityatvam, the state of being in a constant flux of change, like a river, unbroken flow of experience. One of the definitions of life has become very famous also is life is a series of experiences. An experience which is continuously changing. That experience which continuously changes, is this the nityatvam? Is this the swabhav? Is this what I am supposed to be seeing as, recognizing as the swarup? क्या ये वाकई में fact है कि change is eternal? Is this a truth? Is this the absolute truth? Because I'm repeating again, my experience as an individual tells me change is, since birth till death, seems to be changeless. Is that the changelessness supposed to be my swarup? Is this kind of a changelessness supposed to be my swarup? जो हर बार बदलेगा means है और बदलता है. How we see our body, every day, every moment, it is undergoing a change. Whether I recognize it or not, definitely every nowadays people when they have children, especially since the day the child is born, they've started keeping an album of the child's growth, because in front of you your child is growing, but you only observe the changes after a few months, after a few, every few initially, and then later on, much later. We don't observe that every second, every millisecond, there is a change going on in the body. The body that I had one minute second before is not the body I have now. While I'm saying it, it has changed again. That means change seems to be like an inherent law of life. It seems to be the changeless law of life. There seems to be no respite from it. So when this word is Nityam, am I to understand Nityam like this? And I hope this point is clear, because if this gets clear, then will come the Vedantic point. I'm repeating this one more time. My understanding of Nityam, if it is what I am experiencing now in life, what I'm already recognizing, a lot of us are so involved in life that we do not, till we are told, we don't observe this. That, change though is a part of life, just accept it. When we are told, suddenly you realize, when you're exhausted, stressed out, and you are just adapting. When you were a child, you adapted to your parents, and then when you grew up, then you adapted to your siblings and your friends, and then you grew up a little more, you started adapting to your partner and his family, her family, and then you grew a little more, you start adapting to your children again, then you grow a little more, you just go on observing that change. That there never was a time when you felt completely independent of situation and people. That there was a continuous adaptation necessary even to survive. When you are told Nityam is Brahman and that is your Swarup, a student doesn't understand this Nityam of Brahman. He only understands this Nityam that I just elaborated. When you understand this Nityam but natural, the question will be, student can mistake that the Shastra is telling me, this is your Swarup. I hope this point is clear. If you understand that to be your Swarup, then no, there is another Nityatvam, another Nityam entirely that Shastra is pointing to. It is not pointing to this Nityam. This is your experience. It doesn't have to elaborate on that. You already know it. Shastra is invalid if there is something you know and it goes on in that sense. You experience it and then it will elaborate it as truth. No, this you already know. What is that other one? That other Nityatvam is called Kutastha Nityatvam. Kutastha Nityam and Pravaha Nityam. Pravaha Nityam is the regular, constant, changeless state. Kutastha means that which is, come to the last word, motionless. Motionless means it is changeless. Kutastha word comes from two words, Kuta and Stha. Kuta word is very interesting. It is actually popular nowadays. Many of us have heard it thanks to Chanakya. Chanakya is known for his Kuta Niti. What is Kuta Niti? That Kuta Niti, Kuta word itself means, first I'll say in Hindi because it's very explanatory. Uppar se gunayukt means it looks externally to be very appealing, attractive. Bhitar se doshon se bhari. But there is dosh inside. Dosh has a very bad translation of evil. Evil is not the real good translation. That is why I have purposely put Hindi first. दोषों से भरी, दोष से भरी, भीतर में दोष से भरी है, बट बाहर से गुणयुक्त लगती है. Means what looks to be very perfect from outside but is flawed from inside. There are other words which are very common in usage. Is kuta roopam, means roop uska koot hai, deceptive appearance. How you have in plays, natak and all that, you have a whole expression changing, deceptive appearance. Kutas roopam, kuta sakshyam. Another word that gets used very often is false evidence. And this example I am taking from Shankara Bhashyam. This is the meaning Shankara has given. जो ऊपर से गुणयुक्त है and भीतर से दोषों से भरी, कूट. What is this that is ऊपर से attractive and अंदर से दोष? Shastra says, avidya, born. This world that you see, संसार, जो बहुत अपीलिंग लगता है, अट्रैक्टिव दिखता है, बट अंदर से इट इज riddled with dosh born from avidya, which is samsara, which is continuous strife and struggle. What is koot? Let me rephrase this once again to understand it best. Koot is something which is apparently good but has dosh inside. So what is that? He says that which is ignorance, self-ignorance, atma avidya. You don't know your swarup as Brahman is called atma avidya. What is the topic of Vedanta? To educate us on our swarup as Brahman. Today I do not know that. Today I know myself only as a name and a form individual. This knowing myself as name and form individual is actually a product of my ignorance of my own self as Brahman. This Atma Avidya is seed of all dosh. And what are those dosh? He says these doshas are something that you experience as sansara. Sansar is what? Dukkha, shoka, moha. First chapter of Gita is all sansara drishti. Shoka, moha, dukkha. Shok is dukkha. Shok and moh means दुख से भरा हुआ जो एक्सप्रेशन है. बाहर से सब बहुत अच्छा लगता है, life attractive, and especially when we are young and you look forward to so many things in life and you think, oh, life, even when we grow old we still live with the same hope. But there is something that keeps the, there's a carrot always hanging outside which helps you to latch on to expression of life there. Kuta means that which is only looking like that. But what is its real nature? Its real nature is something which is full of dukkha, dosh. Those dosh is kuta. What is stha? Stha here, kuta, stha, two words. Kut ka matlab to ye ho gaya. Stha means something which is adhar, substratum, stationary, sthir. जो ये स्थिर है means, Shankara says here, Kut is the entire expression of life, संसार. उसका जो अधिष्ठान है, आधार है, उसको जो सपोर्ट करता है, and more important, उसको जो कंट्रोल करता है, the controller of the expression of life is called Kutastha, and that is changeless. While Kut is all change, Kutastha becomes that changeless expression which is the controller of all change. This comes from one of the quotations in, again, Shiva, Skanda Puran, Shiva and Parvati. Because this verse, I'm still in the context, this verse is from Guru Gita, from that portion of Skanda Puran. Over there it says, I'll quote unquote, Prakriti ko, जिसको माया से जाना जाता है. I don't want to elaborate on the word now because when we come to later part of Tattva Bodha, this will be elaborated. Just take it this much. This Prakriti that you see expressed as life is Maya. Or Maheshwar ko means the controller. Mayapati. He's called Mayapati, the controller. Samajhna chahiye. That means, how do you see Kutastha? You see Kutastha as the controller, Mayapati of Maya. Prakriti ka jo, not just Purush. Purush and Prakriti, you have all may have heard of these two words. Prakriti means life. Is Prakriti ka jo controller hai, that is Kutastha. Changeless Nityam. I'll repeat this again. Nityam is two kinds. Kutastha Nityam, Pravaha Nityam. Kutastha Nityam means that which is changeless. Changeless on which there seems to be a changing, eternally changing reality. A changeless reality on which seems to be an eternally changing reality, which I perceive as an individual. I hope these two are clear. Just nod your head if it is clear. Okay, great. Change is our experience. Is this the Nityatvam that Shastra talks of? No. The Nityatvam that it talks of is that which is supporting this change, the changeless substratum. Forget everything. I know some of you are not very clear. Forget everything. We've all seen movies. Very soon we are going to start seeing again multiplexes. Now when we enter the hall, supposing you reached early, you enter the hall, what do you see? Screen. They usually have something projected on it. You see a screen there. What is that screen? It is just there. That screen is the substratum, is the Aadhar, is the Sthaha. Tha, stationary, motionless. If that screen is not motionless, can you see a movie that appears to be changing on it? You can't. It's not possible. The reason you can enjoy a movie and for hours together, how time passes out, our concept of time, remember? Bring to events is time. Start of the movie, end of the movie. If the movie is good, you don't even know how the time passed on. खत्म हुए 3 घंटे पता नहीं चला, 2.5 घंटे पता ही नहीं चला, especially if it won't have a break also. You just don't realize how time. You were so focused on what? Just a mere projection. But if you were to see the screen behind, now we did this as an experiment once. Try it, even on your television screens and all that. If there's when you're younger, this is more effective. By now, we've got so acclimatized to all scenes. But when you're young and you see some very touching emotional scene and you begin to start crying with the scene and things like that. That time I was told once, every time you think you're getting involved in that, shift your vision, seeing. Shift your vision deliberately to the screen behind which otherwise you can't see, but you know it is there. If you didn't know that there was, you know there is a screen. If you didn't know the screen is there, you cannot shift it. But because you know, but you can't see. You can't see the screen when the movie is on, but you know the screen is there. So the minute your mind gets involved, attractive, remember, कूटा means बाहर से बड़ा attractive है. When life में कुछ बहुत ज़्यादा involving लगता है, and then you start all these emotions of happiness and unhappiness and expectations and dejections and multiply it. When you start getting too involved, and then life becomes sometimes too difficult to bear, or sometimes it is a very easy flow and you cannot just be expressing gratitude, but heart to heart this is changing, you don't know one of the etc, all that in your mind. At that time, he says, shift it to the changeless perception. You know there is something changeless. How are you experiencing so many life things, so many life moments? How I just said just now, even the body is constantly changing. If it was not changing, you would not be celebrating birthdays. It is constantly changing. You know it, and then you know that change means it's never the same as it was before. Yet that change is attractive. And that involvement in that change is what kind of is non-acceptable to us sometimes. The change is non-acceptable to us sometimes. We resist change because we are looking for the changeless permanence. We want the permanent anandam from it. We want the happiness continuously lasting from the good moments, and we do not want even for a moment our bad moments. Not even a fraction. अंदर से इतना restlessness होता है, a bad moment you want to change instantly because change is inherent. You know it is possible. Now you want to change that. The minute you start shifting the attention to the changeless Nityam, that changeless Nityam is what is the word called as Brahman's Swarup, and that Swarup is you. How? Another example. Let me see if I have. I'll come back to this. Best example of Kutastha Nityam is, it's an explanation also, that which is constantly seeing. Your three avasthas. When you are awake, in your waking state, you are the seer of the entire change of the waking state. Isn't it? The individual is the seer of the waking state. Anna? Yes. Individual is the seer of the waking state. When the individual is the seer of the waking state, you go to sleep. Is this the individual still seeing the sleep? Right? I repeat the question. No, na? Here, waking, अभी हम सब बड़े involved हैं आज, जागे हुए हैं अभी तो hopefully, हम सब जागे हुए हैं. अब हम जो जागे हुए हैं और इस दुनिया को देख रहे हैं, इस दुनिया में कुछ पाना है, कुछ खोना है, कुछ नहीं खोना है, rather, कुछ बदलना है, कुछ होना है, कुछ बनना है, पता नहीं, बहुत कुछ करना है. अभी तो आप नहीं समझोगे हमें क्या क्या बनना है, क्या क्या करना है, क्या क्या पाना है. ठीक है, this is going to help me get that. इसलिए तो हम ये कर रहे हैं. वेदांत पढ़ी इसलिए रहे बिकॉज इट शुड हेल्प मी गेट दैट. अब ये कहने वाला जो सब कुछ है, ये तो जागृत में कह रहा है. अब सपोजिंग आई स्टार्ट इन अ वेरी low tone and I start monotonous something, नींद तो आएगी because this is the best place to sleep. Vedanta classes give us the best sleep, actually speaking. जब जैसे ही नींद आती है, suddenly the teacher will tell you, and वो जगा देता है उस वक्त ये कह के, ये जो एकदम एक मिनट जो अभी आप सो गए ना, ये जागने वाला जो देख रहा है जागृत को पूरी वेकिंग, या यही देख रहा है स्वप्न को? What will be your answer? No. तो किसने देखा स्वप्न को? कभी कभी तो इतनी गहरी नींद आ जाती है कि पता ही नहीं चलता. Sometimes people sleep off in car and you don't realize that the car started moving. मतलब you were sleeping waiting for someone, you just slept off, you didn't even realize the car moved. अरे you were in the waking state, no? You were sitting in the car, you knew you had to go somewhere, and then suddenly you slept off. Where did the whole of this seer, nitya seer of the waker go away in that place? What got replaced? And then the best part was, a friend जिसके साथ आप जा रहे थे is the naughty one, so doesn't let you, let you sleep peacefully. It definitely gives a big jerk on the brake, जानबूझ के, so that you wake up, and एकदम से you get up like that. अरे, what tells you that you slept? Was it the same person who was awake before? Was that observer नित्यम? अभी जो हम दुनिया देख रहे हैं, I hope you get this point. अभी हम दुनिया देख रहे हैं, देखने वाला नित्यम है. मैं नित्यम हूं, मैं सब बदल रहा है यहाँ पे. I am the seer, I am fine. But is this the seer nityam? Absolute? No, because when I sleep off, then all this world disappears. Not only does the world disappear, I also disappear. Best part was in that car, I was having such a, I will say, philosophical conversation with my friend, and then my friend just said, okay, मेरे को 2 मिनट का काम है, and he went off, and then I came back. I just slept off in the meantime, and then I woke up again, and when he braked, and I woke up again, and then we continue the conversation again. He hasn't experienced your sleep. He has seen you sleeping in his waking. But you knew you slept and you woke up. These two different experiences you carried along. Who saw them? वो जो नित्य रहा in spite of the entire अवस्था बदलना, पूरी अवस्था बदल, जागृति चली गई. And if you reflect on this, you get more than half of Vedanta through with you. Puri Jagrat Avastha gets replaced when I go to sleep. There is no cognition of me, the individual. And yet sleep, I say, is my sleep. I slept. मैं ही सोई. I had a dream. The sleep got entirely replaced by dream. And in dream, I saw all kinds of different objects, different realms, different things, unconnected things. And then I suddenly wake up and I say, what dream was that? What did I dream just now? And then you say, no, this is reality. Physical world is reality. Yes, physical world is 1/3 of your reality. ये जो कूटस्थ नित्यम है, this कूटस्थ नित्यम is seeing this 3 constantly changing. And kutastha, another word is, how in the villages you have a bell going round and round around an anvil, and that anvil is stationary over there, and then you have the bell going, and then through that the water gets pumped out or something. If the anvil is not stationary, the movement is not productive. You cannot have something. There is something stationary there. There is something changeless there. This changeless you is your nature. Not the changeless that you think is the changing state. Like in the Bruce Lee quotation. which is the changeless state. Not that the change is the changeless reality, but the changeless state which sees the change in an eternal flow as if ceaselessly, and you don't seem to find an end to it. This substratum, this kutastha nityatvam is Brahman. And I'm concluding the word here today. This Brahman as Guru is the invocation. We are still at the invocation. And why are we spending time on it is because this is also very beautifully, invocation is a prayer. And prayers are functioning on certain principles. This Kutastha word has been taken actually in the 12th chapter of the Gita, Bhagavad Gita. There is a third verse there, and the 12th chapter is entirely on Bhakti Yoga, Upasana. And what is the Upasana? The verse there says, Ye tu aksharam anirdeshyam avyaktam pariupasate sarvatragam achintyam cha kutastham achalam dhruvam. Those, however, who meditate is a very partial translation of upasate, upasana karna. Upasana karna means bringing your mind in a worshipful state, sharp and focused. Meditation has a different connotation, but that's a close translation. जो उपासना करते हैं, mental, in every way on the aksharam, immutable, anirdeshyam, indefinable. Remember we said that in the beginning stage, you cannot define the truth. Avyaktam, unmanifest. Sarvatragam, everywhere, all pervasive. Achintyam, incomprehensible. Kutastham, changeless. Achalam, because it's changeless, it's immovable. It can't move. Dhruvam, constant. One who meditates on this, the principle of upasana is, आप जिसकी उपासना करते हो, वो गुण आप, how do you put this? You take on those gunas. Means, when you start contemplating acutely on these qualities, so-called, they are not qualities in the real sense, जब आप इस पे विचार करते हो, उपासना करते हो, यही आपके गुण in time, the next verse says, in time you become the same. So we are doing the verse, Nityam, Shuddham, Nirabhasam, Nirakaram, Niranjanam, Nityabodham, Chidanandam. Who is that? Brahman. Brahman. This Brahman who is Nityam. That Nityam is, which is Kutastha Nityam. Kutastha Nityam is its Swarupa Lakshana. Means I am able to comprehend all this, and when I contemplate on this as the Guru, means that Brahman who is this is the Guru of to whom I am doing the Namaskar. Principle of Upasana functions, whatever you worship, you get blessed by it. Means this is a very unique thing in Vedanta. It's different from other upasanas. The very object of your worship is actually the nature of one's own self. But since we don't see it today, we don't recognize it today, it's very difficult to understand. Therefore, when I start a contemplative mode, worship is somewhere easier than just thinking independently. So here the student, here Shankaracharya, the writer, the author of this book, is first doing the namaskar to that Brahman and reminding to all students, because for the mumukshus he is writing, Nityam is the swabhav, is the swarup of Brahman. And that is actually your Swarup. And then we come to the second word, Shuddham. Now onwards, I will move faster. I just wanted to take an example to show how in Vedanta each word will mean indicative of the absolute. Shuddham, we all understand the word Shuddham means pure. Just pure, Shuddh. When you say Shuddh hai, say you want something, say you want gold, silver, you're paying a price and you're asking what? You're asking pure hai na? When you go drink water, what do you first want to ask? Pure hai na? What is pure? What is Shuddh? Shuddh in the context of Brahman, in the context of your Swarupam, आप शुद्ध हो, वेदांत कहता है. I only identify myself with all kinds of ashuddh vichar. Let's put it this way. Shuddh, what is Shuddh? Shuddh is referring to Chaitanyam, that awareness, that consciousness, pure consciousness. Pure consciousness means what? A pure consciousness which is there even when there are no objects. Means consciousness which is there when there are no objects also. In my example today, in the waking state, I'm conscious of the waking state. I'm conscious of all the objects here. Objects are making me conscious, make me feel I'm conscious. But in sleep, are there any objects? No. But are you not there? Yes. That consciousness there, which is actually objectless, known to you. When you wake up, it is the same objectless consciousness now which is lending its consciousness to all the objects. This consciousness which is through all seen, heard, felt objects, etc., is actually of the nature of Eka Rasam. Those who know of the word Rasam, South Indian dish, what does Rasam mean? जो रस देता है, of one ras, एक rasam, means there is no other there. There's nothing else. Truth means uniform consciousness. It's uniform. It's not, it doesn't vary. It doesn't change. It doesn't condition. It's ever there. How is this consciousness? Actually, it is a uniform presence. A uniform presence. A seer, uniform seer of waking, dream, and your sleep cycle. Truth means wo, jo, by itself is free of all that it sees. All that it is recognizing here, impurity is what is seen as the individual based life. Ahankar, remember the word aham is you, I, me. Aham is something that is common to all your experiences. Do we ever talk without the reference point of I? Do we ever say anything without the reference point of I? Do we ever have an experience without the reference point of I? I slept, I ate, I did this, I did that. Why did you do this? When you ask someone, I am really concerned about you, when you say, supposing, I'm really concerned about you, is the thought you or I? I am really concerned about you. You don't know how unselfish I am. How unselfish I am is actually unselfishness, the experience of how unselfish I am. You see, everything about us is I, centered on I. On that I are all the cycles. Everything that we experience is centered on that I. This I is by nature Shuddh, Ekarasam. But when I don't recognize it like that, I identify I with reference to this body, senses, mind, desires, hopes, fears, expectations. Now that becomes Ashuddh, Mala. That is not you. So the small I, as the individual I, however great I may think I am in my vision, or anybody may think I am great, I'm still referring to the small I. This I is not your nature. That I, which is Ekarasam through all these experiences of yours, that is Shuddh. Shuddh. Nityam Shuddham. And then he does the next word, Nirabhasam, and that we will do tomorrow because there's already a lot of words that we have seen in this concept. I'll just quickly run over it in few sentences. This invocation is given to see Brahman as the Guru. He's the eternal teacher. Because the topic is Brahman. So Brahman is seen as the teacher. And as a student, we are seeing the Lakshanas of Brahman. By understanding the Lakshana and invoking them, in time my mind begins to be contemplative about those. It may not happen straight away because our minds are still preoccupied with a lot of things in life that we aspire for in this state. That in time they start working. So Nityam is the first word. Basically it means Kutastha Nityam. Recognizing the changeless Swarup of yours against the changing Swabhav of yours. That changeless you, which is Shuddh. Now each one will also help the other. It is Shuddh. It is Ekarasam. It's like saying in the screen movie projection, what is the nature of the screen compared to the entire movie projected? That projection of the movie is called impurity because it's an added thing. It doesn't belong to the screen. The screen is Shuddh. It has nothing in it. It is blank. That consciousness, objectless, is what you are. On it, you don't see it like that, so you add on a lot of qualities to yourself, etc. That is the mala. That is the impurity. And that uniform seer of all the three states defines it to say that all coming and going cycles of your life seem eternally there, but in its inherent state, it is pure. They are unaffected by anything that goes on it. Screen is pure, unaffected by whatever you project. You project a horror movie, you project a comedy on it, you project anything on it. It remains unaffected. In the same way, the real you remains unaffected irrespective of whatever the life is seen as an experience. With this, we will end today. and we will continue us. Just quick. Because I have not yet brought up this thing on Purnamada, I think most of us are aware of Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha. So we will do that as a conclusive chant. Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha. Sarve Santu Niramayah. Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu. Ma Kaschit Dukha Bhag